Good evening. This is a special report. At 2:47 a.m. on March 14th, multiple ballistic missiles struck near the perimeter of Ben Gurion International Airport. The wave of fire lasted less than 2 minutes from first impact to last. When the smoke cleared, the airport was not operational. Eyewitnesses and airport staff describe a sudden, violent strike. Runways were hit. Aircraft parked on the apron were burning. Fuel storage areas caught fire. Parts of Terminal 3 were damaged. The control tower took a direct hit. Emergency teams rushed in. Officials report dozens of casualties and many more wounded. Hospitals took people with burns and trauma. Ground crews, overnight maintenance workers, and early passengers were among the victims. The airport is the main gateway to the country. It handles passenger travel, cargo, medical flights, and diplomatic movement. It is the hub that links the country to the world. With it out of service, travel stops, trade slows, supply lines tighten. Flights were canceled across the board. Foreign carriers halted service. Airports around the region adjusted schedules. El Al grounded planes and scrambled to help passengers. The government closed airspace and warned people to stay off the roads near the airport. The military response focused first on safety and firefighting. Crews worked through the night to stop fires and to clear wreckage. Specialists checked the runways and the soil where fuel burned. The priority was to prevent further explosions and to protect rescue workers. Defense officials said missile defenses were active. They detected the incoming warheads and launched interceptors. But many of the incoming missiles and their submunitions reached the ground. Analysts point to a new and more complex threat. Missiles that open in the final seconds and scatter smaller warheads are harder to stop. When many objects fall at once, defense systems can be overwhelmed. That failure is a serious problem. An airport is a high-value civilian target. It is also a place where damage has wide economic effects. Repairing runways and terminals is one task. Restoring international connections is another. Insurance, airlines, and global trade all react to risk. Airline losses are already heavy. A dozen carriers had aircraft on the ground at the time. Many of those planes were wide-body jets used for long-haul flights. When parked aircraft burn, the damage is often complete. Those planes do not just represent cost. They represent service capacity. Without them, routes stop. One national carrier looked at the edge of collapse. Replacing aircraft is costly. Even if planes are bought, insurers may be reluctant to underwrite flights in a place where missile attacks have destroyed dozens of planes in a single night. That adds a financial layer to the physical damage. Economic analysts say the closure will hit tourism, cargo, and business travel. Tourism revenue falls. Exporters face delays. Medical transfers and diplomatic travel are disrupted. Companies must find land routes or sea routes for key cargo. Those options are slower and more expensive. The repair timeline for major damage is long. Large cratered runways need full excavation and layered rebuilding. Terminals ripped by explosions may require demolition and total rebuild. Environmental cleanup is needed where fuel soaked into the ground. The process takes months. The optimistic view is measured in a few months. The more likely timeline for full international service is much longer. That gap has immediate effects. Cargo companies reroute. Airlines cancel long-haul flights and cut capacity. Tour operators delay trips. Foreign investors pause plans. The country's access to global markets weakens until the airport can host wide-body aircraft again. Leaders met immediately. An emergency cabinet convened. Ministers discussed options that ranged from military reprisals to diplomatic moves. One option raised in the room was a direct strike on an equivalent facility abroad. Advisors urged caution. Such a strike could escalate the conflict and harm civilians. It would not fix the defense gap that the attack exposed. Government officials now face hard choices. They must balance retaliation with the risk of wider war. They must repair critical infrastructure while securing it, and they must restore confidence to airlines and insurers. International partners reacted. Some countries condemned the attack. Others called for restraint. Airlines from Europe and the Americas paused flights. Some governments urged their citizens to avoid travel. Diplomatic missions worked to evacuate their people. Regional airspace closures and warnings added pressure to global travel. On the ground, workers began damage assessment. Teams measured runway fractures and mapped structural collapse. Engineers estimated how much of the main runway was lost and how long repairs would take. Environmental teams tested soil near fuel tanks. Air safety regulators set strict no-fly zones over large parts of the airport. Investigators will look at how the strike bypassed defenses. They will examine radar logs and interceptor launches. Officials noted that interceptors were deployed. They will review if the defense systems were designed for this kind of weapon and this kind of attack pattern. Military analysts say the attack used saturation tactics. Multiple missiles, some with submunitions, arrived almost together. That raises the number of targets for the defense system. Tracking and intercepting dozens of flying objects in a short time is difficult. It stresses the system's sensors and command systems. If the attack included low-flying, maneuvering submunitions, interception becomes harder still. Missile defenses have limits. No system is perfect. This event shows a gap that must be fixed. Insurance markets reacted fast. Underwriters assess catastrophe risk and exposure. An airport attack that destroys dozens of aircraft changes risk models. Insurance companies will recalculate premiums and may place conditions on coverage. Those conditions could include proof of improved defense systems before normal operations resume. That creates a circular problem. Aircraft can be replaced only if carriers can get insurance. Insurers may not cover flights until security is demonstrably better. Governments and industry will need to find a path forward to break that circle. For now, passengers are stranded. Repatriation efforts began, with rescue flights and convoys arranged where possible. The human toll is immediate and raw. The bodies of those lost are being identified. Funeral processions started in the morning light. The wounded filled hospitals. Stories emerged of workers who stayed to help, of airport staff who guided people to safety. Those stories will shape public reaction in the days ahead. The attackers framed the strike as a strategic blow. They said the airport was a legitimate target. Leaders calling the strike justified it as a response to actions taken earlier in the conflict. Many governments push back on the idea that civilian infrastructure should be targeted. Under international law, attacks on civilian infrastructure are subject to strict rules. Combatants must avoid or minimize harm to civilians. Targeting an airport with known civilian use crosses into a complex legal and moral debate. Those debates will play out in courts and in public opinion. The strike also reshapes military operations. Airlift capacity for logistics and medevac is reduced. Transport units that relied on rapid civilian air movement must switch to slower means. This affects military planning and civilian support operations. Economists warn that the damage will ripple into markets. Energy prices can rise when regional stability weakens. Supply chains adapt, but at higher cost. Investors often price in risk quickly, and that can affect currency and stock markets. The broader economic picture is a moving target. Communities near the airport face long recovery. Local businesses that depended on airport traffic lose customers. Workers who served in hospitality and transport face layoffs. Cities that relied on international visitors see empty hotels and closed shops. The recovery will require public aid and private rebuilding. International aid groups prepared to support civilians. They coordinated with local agencies to supply food, shelter, and medical care. Humanitarian concerns become part of the recovery story. The questions now are stark. Can the airport be fixed quickly? Can airlines and insurers be convinced to return? Can missile defenses be upgraded so citizens and travelers can have confidence in their safety? Will the strike change how the state projects power and protects its economy? Repair work will require materials, specialists, and money. It will require time. Short-term fixes may restore limited flights for small aircraft. Full service for wide-body jets needs longer work. Until then, international travel will flow through alternative routes, if they exist or stop. Political fallout will shape the coming weeks. Leaders will face pressure from families and from business. Opposition voices will ask for accountability. Allies will demand clarity on defense plans. The public will want clear answers on how this could happen and what will be done to prevent it again. This is a moment of national reflection. It is a time to measure risk, to shore up defenses, and to plan the road to recovery. The choices made now will determine how fast life can return to normal and how the country will connect to the world again. We will continue to follow this story closely. We will bring updates on the recovery effort, on airline decisions, on insurance moves, and on any military steps taken. For now, the airport stands silent. The effects will be felt for months. In the hours after the strike, ministers spoke to each other by phone. The Prime Minister addressed the nation. He said the attacks will be answered, but he also said the government must act with care. The Prime Minister named a crisis team to work with military and civilian leaders. He promised to protect citizens and to restore critical services. The national defense system that was tested on that night included several batteries. The system known as Iron Dome played a part in the response. Officials said interceptors were launched. Analysts will study why many interceptors did not stop the incoming threat. The question is how to adapt the defense to new weapon types and tactics. The state carrier, El Al, faced a particular crisis. Its long-haul fleet was hit hard. The airline paused ticket sales for many routes. Ground staff were reassigned to help customers. The company's finance team worked to estimate losses and to talk with insurers and regulators. Employees worried about jobs in the future. The attack also hit privately owned and foreign planes. That will set up a complex web of claims between airlines, insurers, and airport authorities. Each plane has a different insurer. Each contract must be reviewed. This will take time and legal work. The economic chain from the attack will be long and complicated. Neighboring countries watch the events closely. Some prepared to take in diverted flights, others closed airspace for safety reasons. International carriers rerouted flights around the area. Long-haul airlines that once flew direct now planned stops in friendly airports to transfer passengers by land or by short-range flights. Air freight companies faced immediate headaches. Perishable goods in transit could spoil. Manufacturers that rely on fast shipments scrambled to find new routes. Some goods moved by sea, but shipping lanes were also under pressure. The overall result? Supply chains slowed and prices for certain goods rose quickly. Business leaders called for clear plans. Chambers of commerce and industry groups asked the government to set timelines and to provide financial help to affected firms. Small businesses near the airport said they lost their weekly income overnight. Hotels that hosted transit passengers reported near zero bookings for weeks ahead. Tour operators canceled trips and offered refunds. Passengers on hold demanded answers. The tourism minister held a briefing to explain what the state would do to support the sector. Plans included temporary visas for stranded tourists who needed to stay longer and transport corridors to move people safely to borders. The legal community already talked about potential cases. Families of victims could seek compensation. Businesses might sue for losses. The international law dimension is also present. If an attack targeted civilian infrastructure knowingly, states and lawyers might call for investigations into possible violations of international humanitarian law. Military planners face new tasks. They must rethink base protection and civil military logistics. They must consider dispersal of critical assets. Relying on one main hub for civilian and military movement is now a risk. Alternative facilities and routes will be reevaluated. Some experts said this event will change how the country approaches national resilience. A greater focus on redundancy and alternate supply lines will follow. Planners will look at boosting smaller airports and improving rail and road links to neighboring ports. But these changes will cost time and money. A comparison to past attacks shows differences and echoes. There have been previous strikes on airports in the region in earlier conflicts. Those events closed airports for days or weeks. This event has a different scale because of the number of aircraft damaged and the modern systems used by both sides. Public mood was raw. People in the capital gathered in parks and city squares. Some lit candles for the dead. Others shouted for action. Social media filled with images and with messages of support for families. Volunteers offered aid and transport to those in need. Community centers opened to help. International bodies called for calm. Some voices urged restraint. Others asked for independent investigations. The United Nations and regional organizations signaled concern and proposed channels for humanitarian aid. Diplomatic teams worked to coordinate evacuations and consular help. The central bank and finance ministry met with market leaders. They looked at how to stabilize markets and to prevent sharp shocks. They considered measures to support affected industries and to ease liquidity. Financial regulators discussed targeted relief and whether to delay some reporting deadlines for impacted firms. Insurance industry leaders held urgent meetings. They will revise risk models and to set conditions for reopening. Those talks will involve governments because public measures to improve security could change insurance decisions. Insurance leaders said they would not act alone. They needed clear evidence of reduced risk before normal coverage would resume. Healthcare workers were under strain. Hospitals set up emergency wards and burn units. Medical staff worked long shifts and called for donor blood and supplies. Medical teams also reached out to international colleagues for extra help. Schools and workplaces in areas near the strike changed schedules. Many companies permitted remote work for safety. Public transport adjusted routes away from damaged zones. The city issued guidance on where to get help and how to report missing persons. The economic numbers will be debated. Early estimates of weekly cost are significant. Analysts will update their figures as repair plans and insurance decisions unfold. The short-term costs include lost tourism, canceled flights, and cargo delays. The long-term costs include lost investment and higher insurance premiums. There are human stories, too. A maintenance worker who stayed to guide a group of sleeping passengers to safety is now in hospital. Airline staff who helped to move people away from burning planes are being praised. Volunteers who fed displaced travelers worked into the night. These personal acts stand against the violence. For travelers, the landscape changed overnight. Some will fly through new hubs and accept longer journeys. Business travel will rely on video calls more. Families may delay trips. The travel industry will restructure to match the new reality. Some analysts predict carriers will reduce direct services to the region for months. Others think that limited insured flights may return sooner if security improves. The choices will depend on clear steps to protect airports and to reassure insurers. The diplomatic dimension is complex. Countries that saw their nationals affected will press for answers. Those with defense ties may offer help to rebuild protection. Those with trade interests will watch the market effects closely. In the weeks ahead, the world will test how resilient global systems are. Ports, airports, ships, and roads will all play a role in moving goods. The test will measure which networks can adapt under stress. For now, the airport remains a central symbol. It is a place of movement, jobs, and connection. Its silence is a visible sign of how conflict can affect normal life in profound ways. Questions also remain for international leaders. Officials from Iran said the attack was aimed at a key target. Other states called for measured responses and for protection of civilians. Diplomats held emergency calls to avoid further escalation. Inside the country, the Prime Minister, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, addressed the nation with a steady tone. He said security services would review what happened and would protect people. He also asked allies to help with logistics and with steps to restore international access. Regional airports at Haifa and Eilat were examined for upgrades, but neither can yet handle most wide-body international flights. That reality keeps the pressure on repairs at the main hub. In the days ahead, we will watch three things closely. First, the repair timeline and the work crews on site. Second, the reaction of insurers and airlines on whether they will resume normal service. Third, any changes to defense systems designed to protect crowded civilian sites. This was a sudden and painful blow. It will take time, money, and careful public policy to repair the damage. The road back will not be quick. But repair crews, volunteers, and officials are already at work. This is our report. We will bring you updates as verified facts become available. Thank you for joining us this hour. Now,